that
There
it?
you go. Mm-hmm.
There you go. Very good. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to speak tonight. It is a very rare occasion that when I speak, I love having an audience. And I missed the part where it's interactive and hands are raised. So we'll just wait till the very end if you have any questions. I know everybody's muted. There's a chat function. So if you have anything to chat or type, we'll take care of that at the end. Again, my name is Glenn Wallace. I am a member of the board of directors at Monocacy Cemetery. I am also the active registrar, meaning I take care of all of like the names of the people coming in. And I'm also the self-proclaimed historian for this generation. I have been working on this project now since 2006, building an archival process for Monocacy Cemetery, using this as a model for archiving basically any cemetery. For those who are not familiar with Monocacy Cemetery in its location, we are located at in Bellsville, right at the intersection of Route 28 and West Hunter Road. A lot of people drive by. I get a lot of comments that people can see just the tiniest bit over the hill and don't realize just how big our cemetery is. It is 13 acres. We have almost 5,800 people buried there. We are an active cemetery. People ask if we're still burying people. Yes, of course, active cemetery. Just to give you an idea of a history in the air here. The original cemetery was around a chapel of ease back in the mid 1700s. What you're seeing here is the current chapel here around this little circle is the old burial ground. The original chapel of ease was located right here at the service entrance today. And the old burial ground was this triangulated area. After about 1872, everything changed. That's when we expanded. So, as I mentioned, the Chapel of Ease, the earliest known burial that we know of is Sarah Carlyle. Some gentleman was passing through from Georgetown, heading up either to Frederick or up the Sino Canal, and he stopped at the Chapel of Ease, which is what it was intended to do, a place where you can get refreshment and rest. And he happened to sit next to a stone, a gravestone, and it said Sarah Carlyle, D for dead or died, 1752, age 52. So she was born in 1700. That is very early for Upper Montgomery County. A congregation met at this Chapel of Ease up until 1849. And that congregation, you may know, moved over to Poolesville into St. Peter's, and basically left the Chapel of Ease, a wooden structure, basically to start decaying. Right around this time frame, 1849, moving forward within 20 years, the Civil War occurred. And at the height of that, the Union Army took over the Chapel of Ease, the structure itself, in the dead of winter, and realized that they needed wood to burn to keep warm. So they literally dismantled the chapel. They had their horses stabled in there. And it was just a guard basically watching the upper hill coming from the Potomac or from the north. In 1872, the property, remember, the congregation moved over to Poolesville, but in 1872, they said, hey, there's still a cemetery back there. We should probably have somebody take care of it. So they annexed it to the Cemetery Association, the cemetery company. And to date, we have 5,747 burials there now. To give you an idea of the process of archiving this cemetery, I went in back in 2006. Somebody was looking for a photograph of a gravestone of their great-great-grandmother. And I had no idea back in 2006 where Bellsville was. So I got out my paper map book and found my way out there, pulled into the cemetery, and I was shocked. First of all, I was shocked at how large the cemetery was out in the countryside. I parked my car and opened the door, and right at my feet was the person I was looking for. So I thought I was going to be spending hours there. I ended up spending about a minute photographing that gravestone and then walking around the cemetery. I have I have loved cemeteries since I was in college. I did my architectural thesis designing a cemetery in Washington, D.C. I have studied in Europe and studied cemetery design and functions in Europe. So when it came to this, having free time in a cemetery, it all started kicking in. And I was wondering, maybe I could build an archival process for getting this information gathered for people who might not know it exists. So basically, I started off with my version of a site survey, and that's basically walking around the cemetery. Google provided an aerial map of it, which I probably should have gone to first when I was driving out there. And I literally just walked every single row. I'll see if my cursor shows up here. You can see the rows coming in down in this way, and those rows are divided. They are now noted. If you come into the cemetery, all the rows have little signs now, thanks to our board members, and photographed the lots and photographed each gravestone so that we have that for historic purposes. Then I began to generate a map, just a simple, not to scale in any way. It's just a visual that visitors who know that their families are buried there, but they just don't remember how to find them, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents. This would be a simple map that we could provide you with their lot number, and you could literally just walk right to it now. I took that tiny map and I blew it up, and part of doing that is I can now locate every single burial site on a map. Having the gravestones and the lot photos is very important. You can see a lot photo here, and then each gravestone within that lot appears. So when I'm having conversations, email conversations with family members, I send them as much as possible. I send them the photographs. I send them the copies of the deeds. If there's a grave marker that has fallen, I will send them a photograph of what it used to look like when it was standing, and then I'll go out and take another one, and I'll send them both so they can understand that the stone, their property, has to be reset. As far as researching for a database, there are many avenues, many directions that you can go in. I am a genealogist by hobby. I will look for as much information as possible, basically online. But what I wanted to get from the cemetery was everything that they basically had, anything that they had at all. Basically, their burial cards, the board of director meeting minutes, everything that would be scribed, naming names and people the dates that people were buying the lots. Very important information. Going on to ancestry.com and familysearch.org is probably where I spend most of my time in researching, because that gives me proper names, dates, places, things that I want to include in our database. A huge source, obituaries and death notices. You would think, okay, that person died on that day and here's where they're going to be buried. But sometimes it doesn't say Monocacy Cemetery, it doesn't give it the name of a cemetery. In fact, today, during these COVID times, obituaries are not including burial places because they don't want people gathering at cemeteries. Ours is currently one of them. But those obituaries and death notices give us verifiable relationships. It would name parents sometimes, their children, their spouses, where they grew up, what they did, if they were in the military. Again, important archival information. Newspaper articles, I think, are hysterical. They would write stories about Aunt Izzy coming to visit and where she was from. And then they would list if there was a party or a gathering, a wedding, a reception, a funeral. They would list everybody in attendance on that. And it would be like, and cousins. So basically, I see that as a resource to give me connections and verifiable connections to their family members. So when I put it all in our database, everything is listed there. Very important, contact relatives. As a genealogist and compiling information, I'm able to figure out living descendants of these family members. And I don't ever have a problem picking up a phone or sending an email if I can find an email address. I'm checking Facebook, Instagram. If I see a name that matches an obituary and possibly a town where they live, I will give them a call and say, basically, hey, I'm just introducing Monocacy Cemetery. We have your family members buried here. There's available sites if you were interested in them, that kind of thing. That's the kind of information in the modern sense of how I can use that. To build the database, I wanted to get all of that information into one place, and I'm basically using an Excel spreadsheet. It's very helpful. I'm transcribing all the cemetery registries, the burial cards, the purchase records that the cemetery had on index cards. So God forbid anything ever happens where the physical resources start to decay or deteriorate, we have an electronic version of it for safekeeping, including scans of all of this information. So it's very important to scan any document that you can find and have it electronically as a backup. Creating an online memorial. I've mentioned before, Find a Grave. Find a Grave is a resource that is now owned, I think for the past 3 or 4 years now, is now owned by Ancestry.com. So the information that you see on Ancestry, which is basically your family tree moving down or whatever, and you can start adding in census records and all that kind of stuff. Now they include the actual burial location on the Find a Grave link on the family trees. So they've basically done a great job of tying it all together. So for that one person, I share this information. The information, there's not much of this is private at all. It's just names, dates, places, occupations, and stuff like that. But I share it with state and local historical societies, because these are the people, specifically Monocacy Cemetery, these are the people who built the upper Montgomery County. So, you know, Poolesville, basically, in Bellsville, in Barnesville, they're all buried at Monocacy Cemetery, up through Dickerson as well. State and county planning commissions. Recently, I was involved with the Montgomery County Cemetery Inventory, and part of that was to gather all the information of 325 known cemeteries. And Monocacy Cemetery obviously is included with that information. And it basically, for the county purposes, puts our cemetery as a dot on their GIS system, geographical information system, so that forever, Monocacy Cemetery will have a proper location identified, that 3,000 years from now, it will still be there. So, and that's a protection issue for developers who move into private by farms, and there's a cemetery on a farm. It's very important that the county and the state identify a cemetery at that location so it doesn't get wiped away by developers. So now that all this information is gathered, how else can I use it? As a genealogist, I said, families. What was it when I first stepped off out of my car that very first time in 2006 and started walking around the cemetery, and I'm seeing names that were generations of single families, like the Pooles, obviously, the Joneses, so many identified within similar lots or adjacent lots. So I was like, okay, this could be really interesting, not just archiving the cemetery, but getting all of the families' information as well, that how they all relate and tie in together. So imagine doing 5,747 family trees. It's done. So our database basically shows, hoping my cursor was showing here, it shows burial location, the owner of the lot, who purchased the lot and when they purchased it, the last name, the first name, middle name, maiden names are collected, their date of birth, where they were born, date of death and where they died, the burial date at Monocacy Cemetery, a Find a Grave link directly in there so I can go right to their Find a Grave memorial page, who they married, when they married, and where they married, list of their children. And if the children are deceased, we're going to make sure that they are linked through Find a Grave. I'll show you that in a second. The father's name, the mother's name, if they were in the military, it's very important. It's a very big aspect of Monocacy Cemetery. I'll show you that shortly. One of the best things of this spreadsheet is being able to see all this red. This red tells us where all of the available burial spots are. As a board member, that's very important. I'm going to introduce you right now to findagrave.com. If you have not visited findagrave.com, it is a free service from ancestry.com. You can go and see millions of very famous people, famous cemeteries, walk through the cemeteries, look up individual names. A lot of stars are listed now. And it's this will kill your lunch periods, I'm telling you, for years. You can spend years looking through this website. So for Monocacy Cemetery, it gives us a basic history of it. It gives you a search engine so you can search by name, obviously. And it tells you how many are there. If we have famous interments there, we do. And photographs of it as it appears here. But as you go in to that website and search through the names, they're all there. And all you have to do is click on the link here, and it shows you if, remember I told you I photographed every gravestone there. If it has a gravestone photo, it gives it a little icon. If it has a portrait of that person, it will give a little icon there as well. So when we say, and this is a phrase that a lot of people use, written in stone. When you see a grave marker and you say, oh, that information is written in stone, not all the time. There are mistakes made on gravestones, unfortunately, but I'm using written in stone I'm using Find a Grave as written in stone because this is information that we have looked, verified, and then it goes up on this website forever. This will be on the internet forever, God willing, as long as Ancestry is willing to sponsor it. So this is an example here, Richard Poole. Many in Poolesville are very familiar with him and his house right there. And so you can see how I am using this website or this webpage to consolidate all the information that I've gathered, in all the birth, death, burial, where the location is, the plot. His parents are listed here, his wife is listed, and his 3 children are listed. But importantly, a new aspect of Find a Grave is that they started allowing you to link to those family members. So again, lunch hours, you can spend, my cats are fighting for some reason. You can spend hours just clicking on links and going back generations and generations and generations. And we're making sure on our archival of Monocacy Cemetery that we're doing diligence and finding those family members. And again, when I said I was looking for living relatives, this is how I'm doing it. I'm going to each family member, click on a link. Oh, there's an obituary. And each time I find an obituary, eventually I'm going to find living relatives. And of course, Richard Poole's grandfather, John Poole, the founder of Poolesville, is buried at Monocacy Cemetery. So it gives very similar information, what I mentioned before. A little bit of history about him that you could get in the read more down bottom. A little bit of biographical information is included there. So here we are. We'll use John Poole as an example of a cemetery tree, not a family tree, but well, it is. It's a cemetery family tree. We know where he is buried. He is right down here in the middle of our cemetery. You'll see the yellow star. And the best part of having all of this kind of information about him and his family is that I can map his children, and I can map his grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren, all buried at Monocacy Cemetery. It's a very powerful tool, especially if relatives are coming to town and they're like, they want me to show them John Poole's grave. I'm like, well, if you have a couple hours, we're going to walk to all of his descendants' graves. And it's happened. It's a great experience. Also, some of the things that come to me when I put out that request are photographs, group photographs such as this. This is a treasure. This is the Poolesville School grades. I think it's a little, I think it's probably first grade through whatever, like the graduate year, it's 12th grade, I think at the time, or 11th grade. But it gives you an idea, all these faces hanging around Poolesville back in 1912, that these people here are all buried at Monocacy Cemetery. They stayed there, and they had families that stayed. You'll see the teacher. This is Mr. Robert Stout, buried at Monocacy Cemetery. And over here, you see Mary Clorinda Fletchall Woodward is also buried. She's hiding. I think it's a cute photograph. She's trying to hide. But this gives me a little bit of pride in seeing that these people are at our cemetery, and they were so involved with the community of Poolesville. Another example, the Poolesville High School class of 1930, more than half of them are buried at Monocacy Cemetery. They stayed in the area and they had their families. They were business people, and we have them at Monocacy Cemetery. So photographs are a huge part of this experience here. Gathering in the information, researching, I can do on my own. The photographs, they had to come from people who were saving them from old albums, up in the attics, down in the basements, out in the garages. Somewhere you've come across a box that you have that has photographs. Hopefully the names are written on the back of them so you can identify them. A lot of the cases that are not, we have a lot of unknown photographs, but they come to me in a condition that I would love to put that up on their Find a Grave website, because it puts a name to a face. And here you are looking in their faces of the people 100 years ago. But in this instance, it came to me and it was kind of very difficult to see. But again, one of my talents is photo restoration. So basically, I just bring that right to life through Photoshop. And now you can see clearly these people. And we have the names, thank God, on this particular photograph. It was an exciting part. It continues to be an exciting part. This is an ongoing project to get a photograph. And since the photograph aspect of this began probably around 2012 or 13, I've collected over 3,500 portraits and candid photographs and just regular family photographs of people. This is just a little measure of that. You can see behind me over my shoulder here, I have an 8-foot board of stamp size photographs. And I've also put those photographs up inside of Monocacy's chapel. If you go in there, you can see a poster of that. They're very small, but they're the faces of all these people buried at Monocacy Cemetery. Another aspect of using this information is our veterans. This became a very focused experience for the archival process, because it took a direction I wasn't anticipating. I just basically wanted to say, where are all our veterans buried? The level of research that it takes to find veteran records, there's websites, fold3.com, for instance. Ancestry is very minimal, but there are ways of getting information. But unfortunately, you have to subscribe to websites and it can get very expensive. But I did my best, and I got in contact with other members of Fold3, and they were helping me along. So I was able to break down our veterans by service. And for instance, the Revolutionary War veterans, these are the ones with that have stones here. We have the most Revolutionary War patriots in Montgomery County in our cemetery. There's only 6, but that's in one cemetery. We have the most. Civil War veterans. We have 30 Confederate soldiers and we have 5 Union soldiers buried at our cemetery. And we identify them. Everybody was a veteran. They served in a military service. So we include them. And remember that map, that little scaled site map I did, it enables us to, if we wanted to give a tour of the Civil War veterans, for instance, we can just take this little map here and walk the cemetery and go directly to these graves. Imagine not having a map and you have to search 5,747 graves for the ones you're looking for. So these maps are really really important part, a benefit to a visitor. Quick note, of all of the people buried, of all of the Civil War veterans buried at Monocacy Cemetery, this gentleman, Private Wallace Selman, was the only Civil War veteran who died during the Civil War. But he died of typhoid fever, so he wasn't killed in battle. But imagine all of those lived through the Civil War. And we have portraits of them. Some in uniform. I love that. So by the time I finished that research, that portion of the research, I developed a list of our known veterans. I keep saying known veterans because the research will be continuing, because there may be some buried there that their veteran records haven't been released, or I haven't just gone and looked for them yet. But I developed this list back in 2017, but to date, here's the new one. So we have over 400 veterans, known veterans buried at our cemetery. And again, with the map, I've taken this and now I've identified where they all are buried. So you can see they're color coded by their service, by what era, what war they were involved with. So we use this map in particular when we lay flags for Memorial Day and Veterans Day, which is coming up. We're going to be laying flags actually next Saturday on the 7th. If you'd like to stop out, we have plenty of volunteers, but if you want to stop out and hang around the periphery just to see how beautiful Monocacy Cemetery is with all those flags flying. An interesting story about a veteran here. This stone belonged to Richard Troth Willis, and he was buried in 1977. His wife had asked his son-in-law to create a sculpture for the tombstone. And he went out there on the premises and carved out this eagle. And it's an eagle who is rising and falling, the death and the life. And this was so visible in our cemetery when you came in, until one day it wasn't there. The whole thing was gone. And I literally spent 4 years trying to find out what happened. Basically, his wife died, but she didn't want to be buried in the country. She wanted to be buried in Silver Spring. So they removed Mr. Willis and brought him over to Gate of Heaven in Silver Spring. And they don't allow standing stones. So that was my first thing. Well, the stone must still exist somewhere. I was able to track down, after 4 years of searching, the guy who sculpted this. And I asked him, whatever happened to it? And he said, it's sitting in my garden. I said, wait a minute. Would you consider donating that back to our cemetery as an all-veteran memorial? And he did. And we were able to retrofit the existing stone with a bronze plaque so that all veterans at our cemetery are acknowledged and recognized. Preservation has become a big part of what we're trying to do at our cemetery. As you all know, back in 2011, we had a pretty intense earthquake. And these stones, they're not glued together, and they will topple, and they did, many of them. We're still trying to deal with a lot of family stones that have toppled or are leaning and very dangerous for pedestrians. So if you have family members at Monocacy Cemetery, please get in contact with us. You'll see my email at the end. Have a pen and paper ready. But we would like to talk to you about preserving and saving your family's stones. This is an example of one of the stones that we found. This one was not related to the earthquake. This one was toppled or had fallen and shattered. You can see it sitting at the base here of the Brewer Monument. And one of our board members took the pieces home and cleaned them and then started piecing them together, and then was able to use a special epoxy that bonds these stone materials together again. So we now were able to erect this stone again. Other examples of restoration are cleaning, a simple cleaning. And when I mean cleaning, I'm not talking about like wire brushes. They're forbidden. You never use a wire brush. You don't use Windex. You don't use any chemicals. The examples that you see here is just water and a bristle brush, either a nylon kitchen scrub brush or a your brown bristle brush and water. That will take off the growth, the algae, the fungi. It will take it off. And then there is a professional product out there. It is called D2 that you can use. You come by, you spray it, and it will eventually eat all the stuff that is embedded in the stone material. And it gets down to that level and returns your stones to what you'll see here is as if they were just carved. These look brand new on the far right. These are those same stones on the left. So what is the future of Monocacy Cemetery? Let me tell you, we are now opening up a new portion of our cemetery up this lane. It's called Cedar Lane. This is specifically for and only for cremated urns that would come in. It's very similar in style to, say, Arlington Cemetery, where everything is precision, everything is lined up, and we want to keep it that way. So if you or your family, I know cremation is basically the way the funeral industry is heading, but we have full burial sites and we have cremation sites, both available. Again, I said, we're an operating cemetery. We will continue to operate for decades to come, generations to come. There is a portion of the property that was donated to us, though we're going to have an additional 7 acres to use in the future when needed. So that basically is my presentation. There's my email address, monocacycemetery@gmail.com. And you can find our website, monocacycemetery.com. Everything about this process, everything about the archival process is on this website, as well as pricing, services, what the services that we can offer. And I think that is basically it. So I will definitely take questions. I will stop the presentation there, coming back to you now, and I will take any questions.
Well, I like to say you've done an outstanding job. I mean, as one who is a history buff, I know the labor of love that you've gone through here and the time. It's just, to me, it was, I mean, I passed that cemetery so many times that finally, after 20 years, I went in.
20 years.
I had an interest because
Yeah.
I used to work for the Postal Service.
Okay.
And I came into the Postal Service when John Day was the Postmaster General of the United States.
He's buried there.
I know he's buried there. And my question was, I know he's from Illinois. He was a lawyer in Bethesda when he was selected by Kennedy.
Kennedy, yeah.
Yes. But is any of the, I know his son is buried there. I think his wife is, but is there any other of the family that's buried from the Day family in the cemetery?
Well, if you'll allow me 1 second here, I'm going to do something I've never been able to do when I'm presenting live. I'm going to grab the screen again. Grab the screen, and I'm going to go to here. I'm going to share. And please, Melissa, tell me if you see Monocacy Cemetery's Find a Grave page. Mm-hmm. Okay. So basically, let's go down here, and I'm going to type in Day. Here are all the days buried at Monocacy Cemetery.
Wow.
You're just mentioning James Edward. So here's
Right.
James. There's his picture. Here's his lot where he's buried. Here's his stone. Here is his family members. And here is his son that you were mentioning, James Edward Jr.
Right.
He's buried at Monocacy Cemetery. And I did not know this before, Molly, who is related, put his portrait up. So
Huh.
that's new. I have to remember that. And again, you're seeing a military service. So keep in mind, you're going to see him on the veteran map. And when we go to place flags next week, a flag will be laid at his grave.
Oh.
So was there any other part of that?
That's unfortunately, the son was killed in an accident in Barnesville
Right.
at a very young age, at 26 years of age. But it's just amazing that, I mean, he was pretty large in my early life, and my experience. After 44 years, I retired from the Postal Service. So
Okay.
it was amazing to find that he was there and that I live in the same town.
There you go. Well, and there's
Thank
a
you.
lot of that. There's a lot of that. There's a poster I put up in the chapel. Again, you'll see the portraits poster, and then you're going to see the famous people that we have. I use famous. He's
Right.
famous, but there are other famous people here, including you mentioned Kennedy, JFK Jr.'s nanny while he was in the White House is buried there. Others, there's so many. You can look them up on our Find a Grave webpage too.
Thank you.
So I'll stop there. Okay. Any other questions?
So I have a question, Glenn.
Yes.
You're talking about cleaning the tombstones.
Yes.
Who does that? Is that volunteers? That's you? And
It is volunteers, of course. It is volunteers. We offer, we tried, but COVID, we tried to offer cleaning workshops, and we have people come in. We couldn't do it this year, obviously for the COVID reason, but we've done it many times before where we call a volunteer day and people come out, or we contact family members, contact me and say, my grandmother's gravestone has fallen and needs to be cleaned. So I'll volunteer to take care of that one. But if I can, I'll coordinate a group effort that we all go out there, bristle brushes, spray bottles or spray tanks handy, and we'll just give quick lessons. It's so simple. It's a lot of elbow grease, it's a lot of massaging that stuff out. But once it's wet, it literally comes off. It's fun. I love it. And you can burn the COVID calories.
oh, yes.
Yes.
Hey, Glenn, it's Heidi. I was
Yes,
wondering
Heidi.
if you could address the idea that many people might not understand that the grave sites are actually private property, and there's a limit to what the board members can do around or to the grave sites. And I'm thinking that maybe you could connect the idea of that private property concept to the many cemeteries I know you're also involved with that have
Right.
fallen into disrepair.
Right.
And what's the difference there?
Yes, there was recently passed in 2018 that allows descendants or people who I'm going to leave it at descendants right now because it gets fuzzy at the end. Descendants can, if they know where their ancestors are buried on like a family farm, they legally can approach that cemetery and visit. The line gets drawn at touching anything in that cemetery. You can view it, but you can't touch it. That transfers over to permissions from the current property owner. If they will allow you to clean the stones, but not lift or move any of the stones, that's probably where you're going to end up. Don't go ever touching or moving gravestones. You will get hurt. You would think that a small gravestone could easily be reset. It does not sit, and you have to do a lot of work to make sure that that gets done only by professionals. But I would say from the get-go, you have the right, but always get permission, always. And let's break that down into Monocacy Cemetery. The families own the lots and the families own the gravestones. So we don't randomly just go cleaning gravestones, just for any reason. We want to make sure that we have permission from a descendant to go in and do that. Any other questions?
Just a quick little story. My mom and her twin sister, when they were very young, lived next door to a cemetery and would go and steal the ribbons off the flowers and place them around the children's burial plots.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, speaking of stories, it's Halloween.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fun.
So I will share with you one of 3 experiences that I've had at Monocacy Cemetery. It was in October, late October, and it was probably around 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Gorgeous blue sky day. I'd been there photographing all the stones. I went row by row, lot by lot, and I was down at the bottom of our cemetery. And I just happened to stand up and I looked and I saw this couple walking towards me. They were odd because I thought they were hippies. She was wearing like a prairie dress with puffy shoulders and her hair pulled back. And he was wearing, I guess, farmer wear, which was like the canvas jeans and a light blue shirt buttoned at the top and long hair. And I'm sitting there going, why are there hippies in our cemetery? And I just said, can I help you? And the guy said, we're looking for the soldier. And between them and me was my car. And in my car was the cemetery book that was written by Betty Frayne. And I said, I can easily look up a name and a location. And I reached into the back of my car and they came up and they're gone. Yeah. And you'd think I was sitting out in the burning sun all day and I was having hallucinations. It was more real than me taking anybody on a tour and saying exactly the same thing and watching them disappear in front of my face. And honest to God, it changed everything about my appreciation for cemeteries. So, and there's 2 other stories, not as dramatic, but like, oh, something's around my side here and you feel it and you just know. So you have to be open to it, not afraid, and it's great. So,
Melissa, I have another story about Glenn.
oh God.
Uh-oh.
Who let the board members on this?
Mary and I, as well as Heidi, are board members. And we were working on that Eagle stone years ago.
Yeah.
And we were resetting some stones next to it because it's what you see when you come into the cemetery. And we wanted to look nice. So we were resetting this stone and Glenn had a digging bar in his hand.
Oh my God.
And it was on Halloween. It was Halloween. And Glenn was trying to pack some dirt and he shoved the digging bar and it went down about 3.5, 4 feet into the ground.
Disappeared into the ground.
It disappeared into the ground. The look on his face, his eyes were like dinner plates.
I was like, oh my God, I just invaded a coffin. No, it went past the coffin. It was,
It went right straight down.
I think it hit Georgia before I was able to pull it back.
Wow.
And of course, the rest of us were just kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, what did you just do?
Interesting.
Everybody stop.
Melissa, if you wanted to learn how to clean tombstones, Mary and I will be happy to show you.
Yes.
Okay.
It is, we go up there in the evening and sometimes in the summertime and we bucket of water, scrub brushes. It's very peaceful. It's very quiet. Nobody talks back to you.
Unless they're leaning over your shoulder.
Yeah, sounds interesting.
But it's
It's a
very
great activity.
yes,
Yeah.
it's very enjoyable and very enlightening. And I never go away from the cemetery that I haven't learned something that day.
Right.
Yeah. I would love to do that with you guys.
And I would also say, go on to findagrave.com. And after you've cleaned a gravestone, remember the name. Go on to findagrave.com, or even before if you have a mobile phone or an iPad, bring it. Go on to our Find a Grave website and look that person up whose stone you're about to clean And if there's a portrait there, just think about that face. This is their final resting place. This is their forever home. They're right there under you, and you're cleaning their stone. I mean, you have to appreciate that.
Wow. Glenn, we want to thank you so much. This
You're
was,
very
Thank you.
welcome.
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Did we lose Dottie? I don't know where Dottie is.
She's there. I see her.
Yeah.
She's doing her homework.
She should be. But we thank you so much. This was so interesting, and we can't wait to hear about your next project.
Absolutely. And again, I invite you all up to visit Monocacy Cemetery. Grab one of our brochures at the kiosk right outside the chapel. It gives you a good idea of the layout of the land there. And I'll also plug our brand new burial area. If you're interested, come now. It's probably the least expensive burial option in Montgomery County. I'm telling you that. Look on our website. If you have any questions, go on our Facebook or send me an email.
Okay.
Glenn, I had one other question.
Yes, Herbert.
I noticed that you mentioned the fact that 31 Confederates were buried at the cemetery.
Yes.
Now, what was interesting to me that I know it was the practice of the South to come up and claim the bodies of their fallen, as
Okay.
in the case of Gettysburg. I found that out at Gettysburg.
Sure.
So the fact that the 30 of them were buried after the Civil War, that apparently they wanted to be buried there.
Yes, long after the Civil War. Yeah. They
Okay.
lived full lives other than Wallace Selman.
Well, that's the question. And then Selman was the exception because he was buried there during the Civil War.
Right.
But it seems that no one came to claim his body. I know most
No,
of
no,
them.
no. I'm sorry. He was down in North Carolina when he became ill, and they brought him north. He died home.
Ah,
Yep.
so he was from Maryland then?
Yeah. He was from
Okay.
Poolesville. Yeah.
That's interesting.
There's a lot of Civil War history. If you know Jimmy Poole, if he's got a lot of information. He's posting it on Poolesville Now and Then on Facebook. If you want to join that group or get in contact with him on Facebook, Jimmy Poole.
And did you ever think about Colonel Edward Baker, who fell at the Battle of Bull's Bluff on the other side of the Potomac, how he got back to San Francisco to be buried?
The stories of carting the dead are pretty gruesome.
I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't. How could they take a person from Maryland to California? Although he was a sitting senator from Oregon.
Right.
So he was personal friend of Lincoln, as you know, and in fact, Edward Lincoln was named after him. That he was that personal.
Yeah.
So the question is, how did they move those bodies 3,000 miles back in 1860s? I have no idea.
Well, that would be a question for Jim Poole. But I have seen enough PBS television to know that it was awful.
Yeah.
It was awful. Yeah.
No railroad.
No railroad. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate all your efforts.
Yeah. So anyway, if there's no other questions, okay, go ahead, Tom.
We want to, I guess, as the cemetery board, we have which you talked about for Veterans Day, we have student service learning hours available to, if anybody that's watching has a student that is in high school or junior high school, middle school, I should say, I'm dating myself, that's looking for hours, they can contact us and we are more than happy to have them come work with us.
Right.
We offer education about the graves, the tombstones, and whatever. It's a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. You can access that through Montgomery County's public school website. Look for volunteer opportunities, and we are listed.
Oh, that's good. I was going to ask if there was any opportunities for that.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Glenn, for your presentation.
You're
Yes,
very
thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I will see you up at Monocacy Cemetery.
Definitely.